Imagine if I told you that on one Friday afternoon, nearly 2,000 years ago, the very fabric of reality was torn apart. That in a single moment, the ground beneath people's feet began to shake violently, the sky turned black at noon, and something happened in a temple miles away that would change the course of human history forever. This isn't mythology. This isn't legend. These are documented events that occurred the moment Jesus Christ breathed his last breath on a Roman cross. What you're about to discover will shake your understanding of that day. Because while most people know Jesus died on Good Friday, very few know about the 7 supernatural events that happened immediately after his death. Events so powerful they transformed cowards into heroes, secrets into bold declarations, and death itself into victory. Are you ready to witness what really happened when the Son of God died? And Jesus cried out again with a loud voice and yielded up his spirit. Picture this. You're standing on a hill outside Jerusalem. The sun should be high overhead, but instead an unnatural darkness has fallen across the land. The air is thick with tension, fear, and something else. Something supernatural. Then it happens. The ground beneath your feet begins to tremble. Not gradually, but violently, as if the earth itself is convulsing in pain. People around you stumble, reaching for anything to steady themselves. Cries of terror pierce the air. Earthquake grows stronger. But here's what makes this earthquake grow stronger. But here's what makes this earthquake different from any natural disaster. The timing. The moment. The exact moment that Jesus releases his final breath, the earth responds. It's as if creation itself recognizes that its creator is dying, and it cannot remain silent. Think about this. Throughout Jesus' ministry, he calmed storms with a word, walked on water, and commanded the elements to obey him. Now, as he dies, those same elements are crying out. The rocks are literally crying out, just as he once said they would if people stayed silent about who he was. This isn't just geology. This is theology written in the language of creation itself. But the earthquake was just the beginning. Miles away from Golgotha, in the heart of Jerusalem's temple, something extraordinary is happening that no human hand could accomplish. For over 1,000 years, a massive curtain is hung in the temple. Not just any curtain, but a veil so thick and heavy that it would take multiple men to move it. This veil, woven with blue, purple, and scarlet thread, stands between the holy place and the Holy of Holies, and the Holy of Holies, the most sacred space on earth, where God's presence dwells. Only one man, the high priest, enters this space, and only once a year. For everyone else, this veil represents an impossible barrier. It declares, you cannot approach God. You are not worthy. Stay back. But at the precise moment Jesus dies, this impossible barrier does the impossible. Barrier does the impossible. From top to bottom, not bottom to top, it's as if human hands had torn it, but from top to bottom, as if God himself had reached down and torn it in two. Can you imagine the shock of the priests? The sound must have echoed through the temple like thunder. The sight must have been overwhelming, the most sacred boundary in their world destroyed in an instant. But here's the beautiful truth they might not have understood in that moment. The way to God was now open to everyone. No more barriers. No more barriers. No more intermediaries. No more you're not good enough or you don't belong. The death of Jesus had torn down the wall between humanity and God forever. This wasn't destruction. It was liberation. Now, here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Because while Jesus' closest followers were hiding in fear, paralyzed by grief and terror, 2 men nobody expected stepped forward with extraordinary courage. Joseph of Arimathea, a wealthy member of the very council that had condemned Jesus, and Nicodemus, the religious leader who had once come to Jesus under cover of darkness, suddenly find themselves transformed. Picture Joseph walking into Pontius Pilate's presence. This is the Roman governor who just hours before had washed his hands of Jesus' blood. Joseph knows the risks. Claiming the body of an executed criminal is tantamount to declaring allegiance to that criminal's cause. But something about Jesus' death has ignited a fire in Joseph's heart that burns brighter than his fear.
I request the body of Jesus, he says, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he's asking.
Pilate is stunned. This respected Jewish leader, This secret disciple is suddenly willing to risk everything for a dead carpenter from Nazareth. Meanwhile, Nicodemus arrives with 75 pounds of expensive spices, myrrh and aloes, worth a fortune. This is no simple burial. This is an act of lavish love and honor. Together, these two men who had hidden their faith in the shadows now work openly, tenderly wrapping Jesus' body according to Jewish burial customs, preparing him for entombment with the care reserved for kings. In their moment of courage, we see a profound truth. Sometimes it takes witnessing death to truly understand the value of life. Sometimes it takes losing everything to find the courage to risk everything. Jesus' body, now wrapped in clean linen and precious spices, is laid in Joseph's own tomb, a new tomb, carved from rock, where no one had ever been buried. It's located in a garden near the place of crucifixion, a detail that will become significant later. A massive stone weighing perhaps a ton or more is rolled across the entrance. In ancient times, this was standard practice, not just to honor the dead, but to protect the body from grave robbers and wild animals. But this tomb is about to become more than a burial place. It's about to become the center of the greatest controversy in human history. The religious leaders, still troubled by Jesus' claim that he would rise again after 3 days, approach Pilate with a concern. What if his disciples steal the body and claim he's risen from the dead? Pilate, perhaps annoyed by their persistent fears, grants their request with words that drip with irony. You have a guard, go make it as secure as you can. So they do. They place a Roman seal on the stone, breaking which would mean death. They station Roman guards at the tomb, soldiers trained to kill, whose own lives would be forfeit if they failed in their duty. What they've created isn't just a tomb, it's a fortress. A fortress that declares to the world, this man will never escape. Death has won. This story is over. But God has a way of turning human plans upside down. 3 days later, as the first light of Sunday morning begins to paint the sky, several women make their way to the tomb. They're carrying spices, planning to complete the burial preparations that had been rushed due to the approaching Sabbath. Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome walk in the pre-dawn darkness, their hearts heavy with grief. Their only concern is practical. Who will roll away the stone for us? But as they approach the garden tomb, they see something that stops them in their tracks. The stone, that massive sealed stone guarded by Roman soldiers, has been rolled away. Not just moved, but rolled away completely, as if it were a pebble. The guards, nowhere to be seen. With trembling steps, they approach the tomb and peer inside. What they find defies every expectation, every assumption about how this story should end. The tomb is empty, not ransacked, not disturbed, simply empty. The linen cloths are there, neatly folded, as if Jesus had simply stepped out of them. Then they see him, an angel, radiant with otherworldly light, sitting where Jesus' body should have been.
"Do not be afraid," the angel says, his voice carrying both authority and comfort. "I know you seek Jesus who was crucified. He is not here, for he has risen as he said."
In that moment, the entire narrative of human history pivots. Death, humanity's greatest enemy, has been defeated. The grave, which had held every human who ever lived, could not hold this one. This isn't resuscitation. This is resurrection. This isn't coming back to life. This is conquering life itself. What happens next is perhaps the most documented series of supernatural events in ancient history. Over the course of 40 days, Jesus appears to his followers in ways that shatter their understanding of reality itself. First, he appears to his disciples in a locked room. Imagine their terror. These men are hiding, certain that they'll be next to face crucifixion. The doors are bolted, the windows shuttered. They're trapped by their own fear. Then suddenly Jesus is standing among them, not as a ghost, not as a vision, but as a man, bearing the scars of crucifixion, yet radiantly alive. "Peace be with you," he says, and in those words, their terror transforms into wonder. But Jesus doesn't stop there. He appears on the road to Emmaus walking alongside two disciples who don't recognize him until he breaks bread with them. He appears by the Sea of Galilee, cooking breakfast for his disciples after they fished all night. He appears to over 500 people at once. A mass appearance that would be impossible to fabricate or hallucinate. Each appearance serves a purpose, to prove his resurrection. Yes, but more importantly, to commission his followers. He's not just showing them he's alive. He's preparing them to tell the world. And here's the remarkable thing. These same disciples who had fled in terror, who had denied even knowing Jesus, are transformed into bold proclaimers of his resurrection. Peter, who had cowered before a servant girl, now stands before thousands and declares that Jesus is Lord. These men go on to face imprisonment. Jesus is Lord. These men go on to face imprisonment, persecution, and death rather than deny what they witnessed. People don't die for what they know is a lie, but they will die for what they know is the truth. From that small group of transformed disciples, something unprecedented begins to happen. The news of Jesus' resurrection spreads like wildfire across the ancient world. Within decades, this message reached Rome. Rome, the capital of the empire. Within centuries, it's reached Rome, the capital of the empire. Within centuries, it has transformed entire civilizations. Within 2 millennia, it has become the most influential message in human history. But here's what makes this spread remarkable. It wasn't spread by armies or governments or wealthy institutions. It was spread by ordinary people, fishermen. It was spread by ordinary people. Because many of us say silent about it. When you celebrate the furnace, it is like the Lapo and actually that is decision and there isn't other former prostitutes who had encountered the risen Christitudes, who had encountered prostitutes, Yet they kept proclaiming the same message. Jesus died for our sins and rose again. Death has been defeated. Hope is possible. Redemption is available to all. This message didn't spread because it was easy to believe. It spread because it was impossible to ignore. And today, centuries later, that same message continues to transform lives. It crosses every boundary. Cultural, racial, economic, educational. It offers hope to the hopeless, purpose to the purposeless, and eternal life to those facing death. 7 events that followed Jesus' death weren't just historical occurrences. They were declarations. The earthquake declared the creation recognizes its creator. The torn veil declared that the way to God is open. The courage of Joseph and Nicodemus declared that faith overcomes fear. The sealed tomb declared humanity's attempt to contain divine power. The empty tomb declared death's defeat. The appearances declared Jesus' victory. The spreading message declared Jesus' victory. The spreading message declares that this victory is available to all. But perhaps the most important declaration is this: the story isn't over. The invitation that began with those first disciples continues today. The same Jesus who conquered death offers you the same transformation he offered them. The same power that raised him from the grave is available to raise you from whatever grave of despair, addiction, purposelessness, or fear you might be in. The question isn't whether these events happened. The historical evidence is overwhelming. The question is, what will you do with this information? Will you dismiss it as ancient history? Or will you recognize it as the most relevant news you could ever receive? Will you see it as a nice story, or as the key to understanding your own purpose and destiny? The same God who shook the earth, tore the veil, inspired courage, conquered death, transformed cowards into heroes, is the same God who is calling your name today. The tomb is still empty, who is calling your name today. The tomb is still empty. The way to God is still open. The invitation still stands. What's your response going to be? The 7 miracles that they thought The 7 miracles that followed Jesus' death proved that this wasn't just another execution. It was the most most significant event in human history. And the most significant question you can ask isn't, did it really happen? But, what does it mean for my life today? If this message has stirred something in your heart, don't ignore it. That stirring might just be the same spirit that rolled away the stone, calling you to your own resurrection, a new life, a new purpose, a new hope. The story that began with an earthquake continues with your decision. What will it be?